Whole story around this investigation of the president, the family's finances, the Biden family, these essentially Chinese government front groups that may have been funneling money into the family, and now news that the FBI has refused to give Congress an informant file alleging that the president took bribes while he was vice president. Do you think something smells here, or is this standard business between the Congress and the FBI, or is this a potential constitutional crisis in the making?
I think it's probably the latter. Keep in mind, by denying Congress the document, what the FBI essentially did today was admit that it exists. And they said, you know, I think they claimed that it was a confidential document and that therefore it's not able to be given to the Congress. I can assure you, having been in Congress, they are going to disagree with that. They don't believe that any confidentiality requirements internal to the FBI would prevent Congress from doing its constitutional duty. So no, there is going to be a constitutional challenge. I think that's correct. But the whole thing does smell. It's a lot of money to a family that doesn't have any experience in the things they apparently got paid for. There's a lot of smoke. Now, that being said, there's no fire yet. There's no hard evidence. There's just a bunch of questions that are going to go unanswered right now. But there's no evidence that Biden actually did anything illegal. There's no evidence that this was at all illegal. But it really, really looks bad for the president and his family, and it certainly bears further investigation. And that's exactly what the Republicans in the House are going to do.
Well, Mick, you know, you and I are both students of modern American presidential history, and I was saying to my panel earlier tonight that this feels a lot like when they used to ask about Richard Nixon, what did the president know and when did he know it? But it seems like there's a real lack of curiosity among many members of the media about whether or not there is a direct link to the president. Right now, they seem to be taking the White House's word for it that, oh, well, no, there's not a direct link, so it doesn't affect the president.
And that's one of the real sad parts about the status of our republic right now, is that the media, which is supposed to hold both parties, all parties accountable, they're supposed to be the sort of that public light that shines upon the government. They're not doing that. I mean, if this had been Donald Trump, they'd be all over it, as we say in the southern part of the states, like a hobo on a ham sandwich. They couldn't let it go. Okay, but since it's their guy, since it's the person from their party, since it's their chosen candidate, they choose to look the other way and instead attack, you know, Congressman Comer, the head of the investigation committee, for personal attacks on the president and so forth. So no, it really is sad. By the way, the other thing we learned from Watergate was also to follow the money. And that, I think, is exactly what they're going to be doing. They're going to follow this money, find out where it came from and where it goes. And again, I have full confidence that the Republicans in the House are going to maintain this investigation, despite the pushback they get from the FBI and the lack of cooperation from the mainstream press.
Finally, Mick, before I let you go, I want to ask you about California Senator Dianne Feinstein. We saw her this week arriving at the Capitol in a wheelchair in photos following her nearly 3 months absence, they said, because of shingles, which, of course, is a terrible thing to suffer. There are calls for her to retire. Why are the Democrats continuing to let her stay in this seat?
Well, it's really hard to sort of push out one of the grand dames of the Senate. I mean, Dianne Feinstein is an institution, not only in the Senate, but especially in the Democrat Party, and most especially in the Democrat Party in California. No Democrat in that state wants to be perceived as pushing this groundbreaking, this iconic woman out of office. But I've dealt with dementia in my family. I don't know if you have or not. The things I'm hearing about Dianne's condition are not particularly good. It's quickly going to come to a time where they're going to have to decide, do they want 2 senators in California, or are they just going to rely on 1? Because I'm not sure right now that she's up to the job based upon what I'm hearing here in Washington, D.C. It's sad to say, and again, I take no joy from that, having been through dementia myself and my family. But this is a serious job. California's an important state. Every state's important. They need 2 senators, and I'm not sure she's up to the job right now.
Indeed, Mick, it is indeed very sad, but thank you so much for your time, and look forward to speaking again soon. Now, before we go to the break, you ever heard the phrase, too much information? Well, have a look at this and enjoy the uncomfortable pause before everyone gets the joke Joe Biden is making here about thin walls.
In a 3-bedroom split-level home in a housing development it was a nice area. That was when they were developing suburbia, with 4 kids and a grandpa living with us. I look back on it and wonder how thin those walls were for my mom and dad, but at any rate.
Amazingly, this isn't the first time he has made this cringeworthy gag, and I thought it sounded familiar, and I was right. Turns out he did the same routine while running from the basement in 2020.
Sometimes look back and wonder how my parents did it with those very thin walls. But my point is this, we did fine.
Too much information, Mr. President.